I was walking down the street, pushing my suitcase on my way to a startup conference. I'd just gotten off the bus and had to walk 4 kilometers in the scorching sun with the suitcase that was becoming a lot more heavier every second. It was on this day that it started to slowly creep up on me that I was actually losing sight of the journey that I was on as a social entrepreneur. What gave me away? It was the tears welling up in my eyes. You see, it was challenging, particularly on this day, because I was up to my eyeballs in debt. And I couldn't take having to tell my landlord once again why my rent was about to be late. I was exhausted. Exhausted by the journey I had been on. Exhausted by the business that I'd founded with my friend Rhea that had this crazy idea about school bags. In my head, I kept thinking of one question. What was I thinking, getting myself into this? And as if right on cue, my phone vibrated, and it was a text message from a friend of mine that left me frozen. Written in caps, it read, "Oh my gosh, Bill Gates just tweeted about your business." I could not imagine what a billionaire, the founder of Microsoft, Bill Gates would say in 150 characters about our idea. Before I get to what Bill Gates actually said, I would have to walk you through what had happened before I got to that moment with my suitcase. I would have to take you back to South Africa, where I'm from, a place called Mogwase. Google Maps refers to it as a township. I refer to it as home. I grew up in a humble home with my dad being a taxi owner and a taxi driver, a shrewd businessman. My mother, on the other hand, she was a nurse. She was as compassionate as they come. Every night, I could see my dad seated at the dinner table with his business books out, counting the money that had come in that day. Also at the dinner table, you could see the driver seated on the hot seat, having to explain to my dad why the money was not adding up. It was at this dinner table that I came to learn that every cent counts, as my dad would say. On the other hand, you had my mother. She claimed she was a nurse. Let me explain. I would walk into the kitchen and I would find her cooking away, and she would tell me stories and say things like, "You know, Thato, today I was actually with a patient of mine, Maggie, and she grew this spinach in her garden. And during her consultation, we had the longest conversation about how she managed to do it all on her own." You see, at the end of this conversation, I would never understand, did she actually get medication that had actually brought her to the mercy of the clinic? And then it dawned to me that Mama never really spoke about how sick her patients were, but rather about how much life her patients had. Unknowingly to my parents, it was this quiet tension between their worlds, one valuing money, the other being compassionate about people, that would be the perfect environment to actually raise up a social entrepreneur. It was this upbringing that would change how I would think and how I would perceive problems. Well, what I've been trying to tell you and share to you was that we're missing a social conditioning in our society when it comes to how we actually think about problems. It is the social conditioning that fails to teach us that we need to stop having a single-minded approach to solving problems. Let's take, for example, 2 kids in South Africa right now. One child wakes up in a suburb. Every morning, she will wake up to pack her school books in a school bag. She will then be dropped off by Mummy Dearest and actually proceed to learn her times tables at school, and the teacher would give her homework to practice some more at night. At home, she sits at her table and diligently does her homework. Having switched on her desk lamp, she actually completes her homework and then calls it a night and goes to bed. On the other hand, you have a child that wakes up in a shack, an informal settlement. Yet she wakes up in the morning to pack her school books in a plastic bag. She regards this as her school bag. Every morning, she walks 45 minutes to and from school, singing along her times tables as a way for her to get some practice in. At night, she sits at her table and diligently does her homework, but with 2 sums to go, her candle burns out. She is forced to call it a night and will never know how she would have done at those 2 sums. The World Bank reported last year that about 1.5 billion people around the world are living in homes without electricity. That is about a quarter of the world's population. And in that same number lives kids like the one I have just explained to you. You see, when you start thinking about problems, you need to see them differently. And can we see in these problems the solutions we are so busy looking for? The answer was yes. My business partner and I founded a company that makes what only Bill Gates actually said in 150 characters. It read, some creative South Africans have created a backpack that doubles as a lamp to study at night. Indeed, we had come up with a backpack that has a solar panel that would charge while a child was walking to school. At night, a child would be afforded the opportunity to study. And remember that plastic bag the child had put their books into? Well, we take about 20 of the very same plastic bag and upcycle them into this very textile that you see in front of you today. We were trying to actually give a child one thing: dignity. Having employed a total of 15 people at our factory manufacturing these bags, it dawned on me that my business partner and I had actually done it. We had thought differently. And for the first time, I could appreciate that what I was thinking was that we could actually solve problems that would make a dent in the world. As I stand here in front of you today and remember back to that day when I had the suitcase in my hand, yes, I had tears rolling down my cheeks, but they were tears of joy. Remarkable things happen when you think differently, when you don't let problems actually control you, but work for you. And yes, it doesn't matter that the tears that were rolling down my cheeks had started off out of frustration. What does matter was that I think differently. And I urge each and every single one of you that when you walk out that door today, that you actually do one thing. Think differently. Thank you.